Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Ignite You New York podcast, powered by NiceTech. I'm your host, Shay Brown, and today we're diving into a topic that is not talked about as much, but it is essential for a growing and small business: fractional marketing. Joining me today is someone who brings both insight and experience to the table, Paul Hook with Hook. With years of hands-on experience helping small businesses navigate the complex world of marketing, Paul brings a wealth of knowledge to our conversation. Paul, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, happy to be here. Thanks.
Paul, would you give us a little bit of a background about yourself?
Let's see, a little bit. Okay, so we won't go too far back, but most of my work in marketing, creative in the capital region has been with agencies. So worked for 4 agencies before going out on my own. That happened during that pandemic you probably heard about that kind of affected everybody. But at that point, I was running a small branding agency. That funding stopped. Went out on my own, and enough people knew me and knew what I do, so started coming to me. It actually took a couple of years before I actually went public with it. Decided on the name Hook because I own that. That's my name, and it's an advertising tactic, and it's single syllable, super easy. So I was kind of born with that. So that was easy. That was the easy part. But just getting into I actually thought that I would be running a virtual agency. That's kind of my assumption or plan at that time, because everybody was still, the whole remote thing. People figured out how to make that work. You could build your teams that way and work virtually. I'd worked with so many different people in the region and beyond that I could build teams easily, whatever projects that came in. But I thought I would be running a virtual agency, meaning doing project work and whatever came my way. But the very first client I got asked me to run their marketing team and be a fractional marketing director, basically. And that was a 5-month contract that is still going. So that was my first step into that, realizing that this is a thing. It's a fractional CE or CFOs has been around. Fractional controllers and finance folks. It's been a thing for a bit. The marketing side isn't not as popular, but I didn't even realize I was doing that for a while until that became a thing. Then I picked up other clients in that same capacity who needed somebody who knew what they were doing, could hit the ground running, but on a part-time basis, either didn't have the budget or they wanted me to train or whatever the situation was. And then that kind of became my niche, and it's what I focus on. And that gives me the consistent work, but still variety, because I'm not just a marketing director at one place. So I've got different industries, different types of clients I can work with.
That makes sense.
It was a very long answer for your question.
No,
not exactly what you asked me.
That was great.
That was
perfect. It was a perfect lead into my next question, which can you explain fractional marketing for me?
Well, it isn't just one thing, and that's what's cool about it, but also it's not as easy to just grab that out of the air and say, okay, that's this. But it can be, and I think that's for me, that's the best thing about it, because it's flexible. It can work in different ways for different companies. I'll give an real life examples. So one client hired me. They had hired their marketing person 3 months out of college, so it was really almost like a mentor trainer kind of arrangement. That was about a 1.5 year contract to get. He's a smart guy, so got him up to speed. But that was more weekly calls, and this is what I'm looking to do. Can you check this? So what do you think about this method? I do some tactical things, some video shooting, some email proofing, some automation setup, and so on. But a lot of that was really training, just getting him up to speed and understanding the different channels he'd be able to work with, other options, and then working with their sales trainer as well and their sales team. So him and that marketing sales to make sure the sales folks had the right marketing materials, et cetera. 2 other arrangements where I was managing an internal team, but also coordinating external experts that we'd bring in for different projects, agencies, printers, et cetera. So it'd be that project manager, so to speak, that kind of that hub that knows everything that's going on, and be the go-to for that. For the internal team, some of them maybe on the junior side, so helping them, also a little bit of that training, but it was more just coordinating all the moving pieces. So, and the good thing, again, I think I mentioned it, but the good thing from my perspective, not that that's important to the client as much, but for me, that it's because I've come from agencies where I had the variety of work, different types of industries, different clients, different projects. But if it's just projects, they have a beginning and an end. In this case, your ongoing work. So I've got almost like a retainer-based or ongoing arrangement, but it's different clients in different industries. So currently have a nonprofit that works with manufacturing, and I have a college. So that's different. There can be a little overlap here and there, but that's different. And then I've got some other project work. So that coming from that agency background, working with so many different industries and a variety of clients as opposed to just one thing, it keeps it very interesting for me. And it also, allows me to bring some ideas from a different industry and kind of cross-pollinate ideas into different, like a healthcare client might use some sort of tactics that we use with tech clients, for instance. And it's kind of interesting to be able to pull that in and something that they may not have tried before, but
yeah,
keeps the variety going. It keeps it interesting and makes every day different.
I love the fact about marketing that it's such a creative industry, really, that you're constantly moving and changing your tactics and how you're even using your tools.
Mm-hmm.
And so I totally understand where you're coming from in terms of why it's exciting and passionate for you. So can you explain then, now that you've kind of given us a little bit of a background on fractional marketing, how is it different from consulting?
Well, consulting, I think for a while there was a bad word. People think, the consultant, okay, that overpriced person that isn't really hands-on, doesn't really get involved. And that, that could, sometimes that arrangement is fine. You might just want that advisor that you want to check in and see, are we doing this right, or give us the strategy and we'll implement it. And sometimes that's the arrangement, that's what they want. But at least my engagements on the fractional side have been more involved. And I do tend to actually tend to roll up my sleeves and actually work on things too. So I get involved with the implementation. I do things maybe a little different than some others might in the same role, but I also been doing this for 39 years. So I've got a lot of experience with people and different agencies I've worked with and different clients. So when there's work that comes in that I don't directly roll my sleeves up and do, or I can, but I don't have the time, or I feel others can do it better, or there are different experts that can handle different things while I'm working on something else. I bring the team with me that's needed for the project at hand. So it's not always just, here are my hours, this is what I'm getting paid this month, this is what the arrangement is to pay me, but I may bring a writer in or a designer in or an animator or something to make sure that this gets done, and that's part of my engagement with the client. So I try to bring it's almost like a mini or impromptu, or what's the right word for it, but it's that team can come and fix or deal with the challenges at hand. The next month it may just be something I'm doing, but that's going beyond what you asked me. Now I can't remember what you asked me.
You're explaining, how the functions of consulting and fractional marketing are different from one another. And I'm understanding it as consulting usually has more formalities and maybe is a little bit, can not always, but can be a little bit more distance. And what you're offering and what you're talking about with fractional marketing is you're picking from different arenas and industries within marketing to pull together a team that will specifically address a particular project or task from an organization that either you're kind of on retainer for, or you have a long-standing relationship with them, and you're a representative of that organization in a way, right?
Yeah, well, that's
a big factor of what changes the consulting aspect. A lot of the times consulting is more behind the scenes, but with fractional marketing or any kind of fractional operation, like you said, fractional finance, whatever, you're more of the face within that organization.
That's true.
Correct.
So it is still consulting work, but I am representing both are in this current situation. Both at one time I had 4 different companies that I was fractional for. So don't always have a card or name or photo on the website, but I am representing those companies and those organizations, and to the outside world, I'm the one that's managing that. It's not, they don't necessarily know how many hours I'm putting in, or that I have other people that are helping me in an external team, but it's as long as we're getting the work done.
Yeah. So as a small business then, if I'm a small business owner and I'm looking to grow and scale, why would this be beneficial to me? Why would having, instead of maybe using a consultant or just somebody per diem maybe to do a project just offhand, why would a fractional marketer be good for my scaling small business?
Well, part of it you just mentioned. So you would have that expertise on staff that shows that you have access to. So if I become fractional marketing director, CMO, whatever the title is for a company, small or startup or even larger, they have access to me. So and I'm a regular, even though I may not have 40, 50 hours a week like everybody else might, but I'm still part of the team. So that's part of that. So and that often retainers were much more common in the older days on the PR side. So, and that would be part of that engagement. If you had a PR retainer with a communications firm, then you were on top of the list if you had a challenge, crisis, or whatever. So similar with that too. And then So it's less, a lot of times the consultants are either for the senior team and so on, but this is part of the whole thing. So that you become part of the team, however many hours or however they make that engagement. It could be, in some cases, it's more hours than others. But then for smaller companies, they don't necessarily have the budget for a full timer, which also includes benefits and other things that come into play
Right.
for that. And they may, or they also they may want that, but they aren't able to do it at the start, but they may want to grow towards that and ramp up to that. And that this is one way to get started a little faster, because you have someone who's
Right.
been there, done that, and can hit the ground running faster. Worked with different industries, whether or not it's the one that they're in or not, but in other relatable industries. I've worked in so many different things. I think fashion maybe one of the only ones I haven't touched yet. There's still time.
There is, and you're close enough to New York City. You never know.
Right. But that's, so you can hit the ground running. You can be flexible with it. It can be X number of hours, and you can work up. Or like that one example I gave, I could be engaged to be that one that trains someone. If you want somebody that's there all the time. Some people are more comfortable with someone in the office they can always go to. That's always there. But you could have somebody like me that is mentoring or training or guiding them, or being that that has that senior knowledge to be able to help or answer a question like, I'm trying to do these things. How do I do X? And then I'm there for that. So it's I think flexibility is maybe the biggest bonus of that, because it's really, like I said before, it's not really a thing like, oh, that's that. It can be a variety of things, just based on the need, the situation, the budget, the timeline, the industry, the setup in the office, all kinds of things. It's very flexible.
Yeah, and it's like having, like you said, full time, but without having to maybe pay out the benefits for a full-time staffer, especially of somebody who's more of a senior within that industry, and you are hitting the ground running a lot faster. And that is a huge benefit to a scaling small business. Yeah. What kind of challenges are small businesses facing that fractional marketing can help solve?
Well, a lot of times, especially startups, so they're and understandably they're very invested in the product, the service, the software, whatever they're working on, and they don't spend enough time thinking about the image, either for funding purposes or for brand recognition or recognition of just their name. So you can have an awesome product, but if nobody knows about it, it's not going to sell. So so that needs to be in there somehow. And sometimes they come to that realization later, or after or understandably, if they realize, okay, we actually have a thing. So this is marketable. This is something we can get funding for. Now we can start promoting it. Maybe they weren't doing that because they weren't sure yet. But so then you get to a situation where you need some brand recognition. People need to have heard that name enough to be paying attention to it. Realize that the thing. Often have two types of clients that'll come to me. One has something that's another way of doing something else, and that's the way they explain it. Oh, it's like this. Oh, okay, I get it. That's one, but that's not as exciting or interesting. The ones that you get that are more like, oh, this is a better way to do this because we do and all these different things. 5 minutes later, oh, that's great. That's awesome. I understand it, but it took 5 minutes to tell me that. And most people are going to check out after a couple sentences and be like, well, I got to get on the way home. And so they're thinking of other things. That's one of the things that, as passionate and knowledgeable about their product, service, whatever they have, everything's flying at once, like, oh, this is great and so on, but we have to get that concise because the attention span challenges of everyone, it just gets worse. So I use people that know me, I use this analogy often. There's video at the gas pumps. So there's always something coming at you, and our brains can only take so much, and we're thinking of 5 different things at the same time. When am I going to think about your company or your product? As awesome as it is, I'm not thinking about that. So I need multiple touch points. I need different reasons to pay attention to this. I need to get to know the people that are behind your company, however it is, spokespeople or ads or social or all those things. So back when I was teen and my dad was working, I just remember he was Channel 10. He would watch Channel 10 to get the Times Union. He might see a billboard on the way to work. He might get a piece of direct mail, radio, 5 things, TV, ads, and so on. There's all that plus 5,000 more things now. That's awesome because there's so many things we can go to, but what's not as awesome is which are the ones, because no one has, unless you're Coke or Apple or Google. Amazon, like, who has the money to do all of those? So you have to pick and choose where that's going to be. And aside from this is just advertising, kind of talking about in that regard. That's just a piece of it. Thought leadership. Are you going to trade shows? Are you sponsoring things? Are you speaking? Is your leader comfortable getting in front of people? I've been at agencies where that wasn't the case. So they got to know some of the VPs, or even the a marketing director or business development person was more familiar because they were out. So and then what's the sales process? What's that like? Are you regional? Is it handshakes, or is it all video conferencing? Are you dealing with clients around the world? So all that stuff needs to be, that whole mess of everything, I guess, needs to be kind of brought in together to figure out, okay, what do we have here? Who do we have to work on? What's our bandwidth? What are we selling here? But the biggest thing is, who are we trying to reach? And I've had clients that don't know that. So and then there's research involved. We're trying to figure out, you don't want to spray and pray and throw stuff on the wall and see
no,
what's
that doesn't work. It really doesn't.
Because of what I said before, there's so much stuff coming at you. That's never going to work, because you're competing with so much else.
You need a coordinated attack in order to actually have an effective marketing plan. Absolutely. Knowing your audience is very key. And I do think that a lot of small businesses, especially scaling ones, don't necessarily know what that means or looks like, because maybe they're scaling outside of their town, outside of their city, outside of their region, and that can be very challenging, because what does that look like? And that's where a fractional marketer can come in and really help with guiding, those challenging paths to take with marketing your product and getting it out to a wider audience, a broader audience.
Well, you also get the external opinion, or the external set of eyes on something, because especially in younger companies, they've been living and breathing that for a while, and then you have someone third party or from the outside perspective to look at something and be like, I don't understand. And this is common. There'll be a lot of jargon or inside verbiage or phrasing or ways of saying things that totally make sense within that company or even within that industry, but to the purchaser or the buyer or someone, the people researching your product or service aren't necessarily the person the engineer.
Yes.
They may be someone that, find me 4 software companies that do this.
Yeah.
They need to be able to understand it quickly.
Yes.
On the site. So this stuff needs to almost, I don't want to use spoon fed, sounds negative, but you gotta bring them in slowly, get them. There's this has to do a little more, maybe more with networking, but and I imagine there's a name for this, but I've called it the 2, the 5, and the hour. So there's a situation where you go to something, a business review event or a chamber event or any sort of networking thing. You meet somebody, you're just talking. You got a 2-minute conversation basically to say who you are and what you do. And then if there's an interest in what I'm working on, or what I'm looking to do, or what I'm engaged in, tell me more about that. That's that 5-minute conversation. So you got the 2-minute just introduce. 5 minutes is a little more depth. And then if there's really you do what I need, or I'm looking for that, let's set up a meeting. Usually the first meeting's an hour. So that's that scale. So that's kind of what you can relate that to, or relay that to, getting this information, either being on your website or how you put things out on social or whatever. People are going to get that small taste, be like, oh, that's interesting, I want to learn a little more. There's that 5-minute depth. I'm going to read a little bit more on the website and say, okay, I'm going to call them, or I'm going to press the set up a free consultation, whatever it is, call to action. It's whether you're in person or whether you're doing it that way, there's that same kind of process happens, but oftentimes, and it's similar to looking at like a diner menu, everything is there in front of you. And that's what oftentimes, because they're so passionate and they know so much, I'm like, we got to tell everybody about this awesome thing that we have. So it's all there. And then when you get to it and you're looking at first time, like, what do I pay attention to?
It's overwhelming.
It's I don't know, I'm sure you've been on many websites where you look through, spend a couple minutes, you still don't know what they do.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, you talk about the restaurant menu, and one of the first projects that I personally worked on as a marketer a long time ago now was actually a restaurant menu. Making it clear and easy to read to the consumer or to whoever your audience is so critically important. The same thing translates to any marketing material, especially a website. Having a website that's easy to navigate, easy to read, and easy to ingest what your product is so critical nowadays. It's almost like, the crux of your small business. Yeah, that's how you're outreaching.
Deeper into the weeds, but there's a reason why there aren't 15 car colors to choose from when you go to buy a car,
right?
Because you won't make a decision.
Yes.
So if you've got 20 nav buttons on somebody's website, it's easier to just check on that later, and then later it doesn't happen.
It never happens. So, absolutely.
So you got to kind of guide them through, whether they realize it's happening, but you simplify it, guide them through that, let them let them find their journey, find what they're looking for.
And then outreach to you.
Yeah.
Some things it's okay to leave off of your website or off of some of your marketing material. That's the information that you then want them to come to you for. And that's when you know you have your customer. If they're coming to you for that information, you're making the sale. You're landing your whale, so to speak, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and then the other part of putting too much on the website too is you're also educating your competition on what you might do differently.
Yes.
So yeah, you want to get it to that point where, okay, now, this is really but I got to learn more. I have to actually engage. So I'm going to step up.
Absolutely.
And, you don't know the other part of that too is just the whole sales cycle. How long is the sales cycle? If it's something that's, if you're selling soda, that's a quick decision. If you're commercial property, or if you're even having somebody build a website for you, that's investment. That's money spent. So you're not making that decision in 10 minutes. You may make that decision over months.
Yeah.
You may review a few different places, check reviews, talk to other people, get other opinions, and 6 months later you make a decision. So that's back to that whole top of mind thing. Getting your name out there, getting your people out there. That doesn't always happen right away. It can, but it doesn't always happen that first time. But you want to really trace things back to where the engagement started. When did somebody first hear of you? That's when you planted the seed, and then how many other steps you're taking. You make sure you don't disappear. Don't get all excited about blogging every week and then only do it for 2 months and disappear for 6 months. So
yeah,
consistency is more important than frequency. Figure out what that cadence could be and stick with that, and then it will reap rewards later as long as you're doing your
consistent.
Yeah, you're putting your effort out to keep that name out there.
Paul, what would you say then the value is as a small business? If I was a small business taking expense out of my budget to hire a service like yours, what is the value behind that?
Well, there's a couple of things. So you have, as we talked about before, with the experience, you get to hit the ground running a little faster. So we're not spending 3 to 6 months to learn the programs, to learn everybody in the office, learn the process, understand the industry, get to know the clients, et cetera.
Yeah.
I can move a little quicker on that just based on experience. And then the other people that in my situation bring with me, sometimes they're industry experts, have knowledge in that regard, and sometimes they're just extra set of eyes and ears that help me figure that out to be able to ramp up sooner. But the other thing is it's easier to disengage with a fractional relationship or someone who comes in, or even on purpose. You may just want to, like the one I gave you the example of where I was mentoring someone that was a limited time run to get him up to speed, right? It's easier to do that in a 3, 6, 9 month engagement than it would be to hire somebody full time and then 3 months and cut the cord. It's a very expensive procedure to hire and then train and then cut the cord on someone. So as well as being disruptive internally, consultants or outside folks that come in to work are much more used to that kind of a setup, and that's normal in business operations. So that doesn't send any red flags to other employees, or that doesn't disrupt things as much because their impact isn't as direct. They're not always there. No, there's a guy next to me, he's gone. So it's not that it doesn't cut that much, but and sometimes that's actually the way it's even set up to beginning. You didn't talk about this, but another way that someone can come in a fractional engagement is that gap filler. And I've actually talked to agency friends about that. This hasn't happened yet, but they've seen this where this could be a benefit. They have a very good client, great relationship with the client. The marketing director from the client leaves. So oftentimes that means whoever comes in might have an agency they work with, then they lose that relationship. I could be the gap filler to keep that going for the client as well. So they keep momentum going. I'm also friendly with the agency. So they've got a friendly on the inside and they can keep things moving along well. And then sometimes that sticks. So that's another, but then from my perspective, I know that that's limited run, but that's fine. That's what my whole thing is.
You're set up to do that.
Exactly.
And that is honestly hugely beneficial to a small business because there is always inherent risk with hiring a new employee. That onboarding and training process is a lot. It's very costly. So for a scaling small business, this actually could be a more cost-effective solution, even if out the gate, maybe it seems like, oh, this could be a lot of money and expenses, but you're not as contractually obligated as you would be with a full-time employee. So there's so much more flexibility to what you're able to do and accomplish. Yeah. I love that.
And that I keep going back to the example where I was training somebody, but that can be the start of, I can know full well that's the engagement going in, and then in the end of that, the person that you've hired is much further along than they would have been oftentimes in businesses where they're the only marketing person there. The whole company can be do accounting or law or professional services or something. They don't have a team necessarily. It's the only one. So who are they learning from? They're hearing from the owner who wants these sales to go up or these people to be reached, but they don't know the strategies around it.
Right.
So this is a way to ramp that up, knowing full well that this isn't a 5-year engagement. This is what I'm here for. But that's fine. And it also, back to my perspective too, that keeps it interesting. It's a different thing, a different process, a way to and I oftentimes on the calls with the guy that worked at that place, I would often say, wow, I actually know things, because I just would do, and just like, this is what we should do. But then when I'm telling somebody, they have questions about it, I'm like, oh yeah, here's the answer. This is what you do. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I learned something in all this time. So I have something to give. So useful.
Yeah, I think you are plenty useful, Paul. I would agree with that.
Good, thank you. Give me a sticker.
Paul, what do you think the future holds for fractional marketing? Is this something that might become the norm within small businesses?
Yeah, I think it's partly getting used to doing things different ways, and I think the pandemic and our ability to learn video conferencing in 2 weeks, and realizing, oh, we can actually work remotely and work from home, and we can do things differently that aren't there. This is the way we do things here, kind of thing. So bringing in experts in different capacities when you need them, if it's short term or for a longer engagement, or when you're in that mode where we need some marketing help, are we going to hire an agency and pay all that overhead or that amount of money for that expertise, which might be great, but might not have the money ready to do that? Or are we going to hire somebody and let them learn as they move along? So it's part of the process, and I think it just needs to be more familiar to people that they can do that, or recognize what this fractional marketing, as we're talking about, is more of a newer term, but it's not that it hasn't been around. In a consulting basis, you still do this type of work. It's just thinking differently about how to approach that, and recognizing the need for it, but also recognizing that that's not okay. Now all this research and effort that we put in to hone our product or service and everything, that isn't all going away to somebody who's just needs to talk about us, and here's this other senior person we've got to pay full time and everything that goes along with it. There are ways to step into that, and eventually, you want to be successful enough where you've got somebody who's doing that all the time, maybe has a team, maybe has an engagement with an agency, what have you. So it doesn't need to be that, okay, we're going to do this, but this is kind of limiting because I don't have this person all the time. I really want to be able to talk to them all the time, want them engaged here. It's a way to get there. So I think it's got great future, and there are plenty of people I talk with all the time that have had roles either in agencies or as the marketing director in a corporate side or in a company, nonprofit, what have you, that can see themselves doing this and like working with different clients, but also would like the consistency of regular work. So it's and I can't, I'd like to say I'm a capital region fractional marketer, but there's only so much of me.
Yeah.
So I can't be working with so many, and I don't want to build a building full of people that are account managing a whole bunch of maybe I would have done that 20 years ago, but I don't want to do that now. So I think there's plenty of this work that can be done. It's just embracing that model as an option.
Yeah, Paul, I have to say I agree with you completely. I don't see this as something that is going away. I see it as something that would potentially be ramping up quite a bit, especially with, all the big pushes for manufacturing across New York State. A lot of small businesses are going to start growing pretty exponentially here. You're going to really be looking for different options for how to problem solve any of your problems, even if it's outside of marketing. Maybe it's finance, like you mentioned earlier, whatever. You're going to be most likely outsourcing and finding ways to cost effectively solve those problems.
I think one of my old agency presidents told me, I didn't look into this further, just that there's companies grow to a certain size, then you need to start adding that next level of support. I don't know if 12 was the magic number, and then you start needing to add
true. You have to add like specific HR at a certain stage of your business. So all those things fractionally will be so.
They can. So that's the thing, that because other fractional doesn't have to be just marketing. So HR, finance, accounting, and so on. some of those you don't necessarily at that number have to bring in full timers
Right.
in that role, either junior because that's what you can afford, or more senior because we need this because that's what the playbook says and we have to do this. Or I can't, as CEO president, I can't be doing these 5 different things. As many of them want to have hands-on and do so many different things, but they also know what's your time worth, where are you best spending your time, and what are you best at, what you should be talking to your clients, or you should be talking to prospects,
Right.
and having other people do these other things. But they can be done on that fractional basis, whether it's a ramp up to having somebody full time or just get that expert in. You may not need them all the time. That's the other thing. We didn't necessarily reference that. You may only need somebody 10 hours a week. You don't necessarily have that much work that you need somebody all the time.
Right.
So why overpay for,
Exactly.
or why have someone who's,
especially if you're at the
sitting around.
scaling part, you can literally scale your relationship with your fractional marketer or whoever you're hiring. Paul, what kind of advice would you give to a small business that might be considering fractional marketing services?
Well, I think if they're to that point, they've taken the first step, so they're actually considering it, and part of that is just knowing that is an option, that is a way to go about it, because it's not as common, or it's not that out there in the universe as well as it might be, even for fractional, accounting and finance folks. Someone in, as I mentioned before, in startup mode or in their young stage, are really concentrating on what they're working on, so they may not be thinking about that. But that's step one, realizing that that's a possibility. And then it's just having that conversation with whoever that candidate may be, and just understanding their background and knowing that marketing is marketing. Doesn't mean that they have to have the exact experience of what your product is, because chances of you may be disappointed after a few months of searching trying to find that exact person, because doesn't mean that they're available in that fractional mode. They may be part of a larger company, they may be part of an agency, and then you're getting into the agency side of things with that expense as well. Or they may the old back 15 years ago, if you were freelancing, you were in between jobs, but now there are people that are doing that much more often, but not everyone who's freelancing wants to be doing that all the time. Some of them are still in that mode. They're going to take that type of work on, but then if something comes along, they're done. So that, make sure that you've got that commitment too, because you may not need somebody for a year or 2 years, but you want to make sure that you got them for the engagement that you're hiring them for, and then you be realistic about what they can get done, because the other part of that is that they're not full time, so they're not going to get you that big client in 2 weeks. So
right.
That ramp up time has to. They can hit the ground running faster, but the ramp up is still going to take the amount of time that you mutually agree is going to be realistic and can work with the budget and bandwidth that companies may have. So, but the first thing is just recognizing that as an option, and that's not I don't think that's necessarily in their heads right away, and that's on people like me and others that are doing this type of thing, to be able to get that word out that this is an option. I don't promote that much, mostly because I'm busy and I've been doing this for a while. People know me, they come to me with things that they need, and that's been sustaining me fine. I don't need to shout from the rooftops that I do this, but I enjoy it. I'm happy to do it, and I always like meeting new people, new companies, new challenges, new engagements, and I've worked in so many different things that it keeps it interesting. As I mentioned before, that keeps the variety going, which is similar to the working at an agency where you have a number of different types of projects and industries and clients to work on. That's what, if you've got a couple of fractional engagements in different industries, and it keeps my day interesting every time I turn the computer on, every time I take a call.
It's a little different. Yeah, I think that's really great advice, though. One, the fact that you're even considering it as an option as a small business to maybe take on and support your scaling efforts, but also two, making sure you gauge it correctly, understanding that this isn't a full-time employee. They aren't going to get that turnaround in 2 weeks. There is a lot of steps that need to be taken in order to get to that point. So I think that those are great tips. So I have another final question for you regarding fractional marketing. I want to know, if you're a small business and maybe you've been listening to this and you're like, I have services that maybe I could expand into fractional marketing. What kind of advice would you give to them?
Well, that's you just need to be able to present that as an option to whoever you're speaking with, as opposed to kind of the standard way of doing it. This is what you want. This is our solution. Here's the price. But that often has a time limit to it. You're doing this and it's done, and then maybe hopefully we'll get some more stuff. But if we can figure out something where even if it's on a smaller scale, but an ongoing sort of either consultancy or relationship or activity, or we take on this piece for you, we'll do this larger thing, but it would be great if you had some consistency and explain that why it makes sense. If you've got, I mentioned blogging before. I've had clients I had one fractional client that didn't want to blog, but had a great voice and had done voiceover work. So we did a podcast for regular content, fresh content for a website. It was a younger software company that needed a reason for Google to promote the site, for people to be able to visit it and do some interviews with some people that have networks and, get some attention to the site. So that's one way of doing it, but figure out, is there something that on a consistent basis we can do, whether it's a marketing or a different type of fractional engagement. And then that, it's not, you're not selling them something they don't need. It's something that they can do consistently to keep that exposure, keep their name out there, and keep that engagement from your side, keep that engagement with them. And then that could potentially grow, or it can show that I can do this consistently. I can do this for others, but it also is that, not to say it's passive income because you're still working for it, but it's consistent income. Yeah. So that you've got that. And then everything else on top of that is just what helps your business grow. But if you can get enough of those, which is what, my main niche is doing having these types of engagement that keeps me going every month. It's not, when am I going to get another web project or something like that. And some of those can take very long timelines. So yeah, project work can take a long time,
especially a web project.
Oh yeah. Very good.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Definitely. Paul, thank you so much. I just want to give you the opportunity to leave us with any final thoughts.
So I have my side business is really a feeder for my marketing work. So at the beginning of the lockdown, when I was working for a branding agency, I said to a couple of friends, hey, let's do one of these virtual happy hour things until this thing goes away. In a few weeks, didn't go away. But I started this thing called Hour Hour. So it was a virtual happy hour call, 5 o'clock on Thursday. A few weeks later, I realized not everybody wanted the happy hour mode or was in that mood. So I did a coffee version on Wednesday mornings. We just hit 5 years on Wednesday morning for the coffee calls. It stayed and grew, and people every week, every Wednesday,
That's
I have an
amazing.
alibi. I'm always on 8:30, 9:30 on my computer, and it's been a way to grow, get my name out there more, but also the people that are involved too, and just create networks, and people more and more know what's going on. I've had competition on people ask, oh, we have different people in different industries. No, it's not a leads group, it's a conversation. So and I really firmly believe people will get to know you better if you get to know people better if you give them the chance to talk. And that's really there's no agenda. It's just conversation, and there's no stopping it because there's enough type A's on it that we have plenty, and we talk about anything. And people, and timing wise, the coffee one Wednesday morning, that was perfect timing because it's a nice break in the middle of the week, and people jump on. I usually get about 20 people a week, and
that's amazing. Those are really great numbers, especially for a virtual event now post.
Because most of them dropped off.
Yes, exactly. So that is actually really incredible.
Yeah,
I'm so sincere.
And then the happy hour, that was 5 o'clock on Thursdays. That stopped after a year or so because everybody was back to doing things. Kids are back to school, driving to sports, all that. So what I did in that instance was I moved it to an in-person once a month. So I've done, I think, 62 of them. So I move it to a different location in the 4-county capital district, rotate. And I've never repeated the place. And I just say, okay, it's always the last Thursday of the month. We're going to, last one was a Bootleggers. I said, we're going to Bootleggers. I just tell people there's no cost. I just promote it and get people together and you get different folks together based on where it is and their timing. And
then you're supporting a small business.
Yeah,
you're
it's
going
win-win all
to
around.
a restaurant.
They get new customers. Half the people have never been to the place.
Oh,
they wouldn't
that's
have gone
great.
Had it not been for what some people doing. So I have grand ideas and plans to roll this out, to monetize, to turn this into more,
of course,
make more events. And I've had conversations with different folks about doing different things, to do monthly programs and some bigger networking event that takes a lot of these groups that do this type of thing together and have one function. I gotta make that a fractional client because I gotta find time to get to that. But it is it's really open to everyone. I don't blast the Zoom link because I don't know who's coming, but anybody wants to go, I invite anybody. Plenty of repeat people come, so it's just open forum, both the in person and the once a week thing. So it's side business, but I've gotten clients out of it, and people have gotten jobs out of it. They've gotten interviews out of it. One of the coolest things was the International Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame found a home for their Hall of Fame from being on my call. Just the two people happen to need that. And once I'm looking for this, hey, the Time Genius Center when it was called the Time Genius, has room for that they're renting out for this. 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, they had a meeting, they saw the space, they signed their contract, and that's where they are. So, you never know.
You never know. And honestly, some of the best advice I've always gotten is the best networking is friendship based, creating a friendship, humanizing the situation, getting to know that person authentically. Because once you actually know that person, then it's easy to want to either do something for them or them to want to do something for you. Because we all like to do nice things for people. Yeah. We don't even have to get anything out of it. It's just human nature to want to support each other. So that's a lovely community, Paul. I'm so glad that you were able to share. Do you have a link for registering for or anything like that?
Just hit me up on LinkedIn. That's
we will put Paul's LinkedIn up on the screen for everybody.
I get people that either introduce me that way or they request, and then I'm happy to send them an invite. And people want to work with people they like. Yes. And at the end of the day, and it's really, and it's back to the marketing side of things. Just staying top of mind is the more people you know. The networks of the people that are on my calls are just vast. Like, you don't know how many ripples that goes out. Yeah. And you need something, have something, looking to meet somebody, you put that message out to X number of people, you just have a much better chance of, I've seen it happen so many times. I know somebody, there was 2 weeks ago, of all things, one of the guys in the call was looking for a family owned or an independent, not a 1-800-Flowers, but an independent florist in New Hartford, New York. And he just throws that out like, okay, that's so random. And one of the women on the call, that's where she's from.
So perfect. She was like, I know. Betty has the perfect store down the street. Yeah, no, that's great.
So you don't know until you throw that out.
That's exactly what those.
The week before, that wouldn't have been an answer, but I saw that happen right in front of me. I'm like, okay, so this is how the world can work better.
Paul, that's great. I really hope that people who are watching this find your networking hour, because honestly, our hour sounds like a really incredible opportunity. I mean, just to meet people, even if it's not face-to-face, but on a broader scale like that, as you mentioned, clearly is hugely beneficial. You can find a florist in New Hartford. That's a wrap for today's episode of the Ignite You New York podcast, powered by NiceTech. A big thank you to our guest, Paul Hook of Hook, for joining us and sharing such valuable insights on the intricacies of fractional marketing. If you found today's discussion helpful, be sure to give us a like, subscribe, and leave a comment. We would love to hear from our listeners. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Shay Brown, and we'll catch you next time.